Welcome to NICTITATING Presents. This is an interview series with speculative fiction authors. My guest today is Paula D. Ashe. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. How you doing, Sean?
I'm doing pretty good. I woke up like 20 minutes ago because apparently I'm a vampire. It's like 1 o'clock where I am, so my sleep cycle is so screwed. But anyway,
Yeah.
um, so this is exciting because you're going to be having a number of projects coming out from NICTITATING. And this is
Yes.
actually the first person I'm having on the interview series that is going to have a book through NICTITATING.
Yeah.
So that's fun.
I'm stoked. It is fun. It's exciting. It's kind of a big deal. I've been really busy with a lot of other, like non-writing projects in life and things like that. So I haven't really had the chance to really sort of sit back and reflect on. I realize this is just for the process of writing, but it's kind of a big deal. I am really excited about the various projects that we're going to be working on, and what NICTITATING Press has to is coming up with. So yeah,
Yeah, that makes two of us. I should be excited. I'm putting it all out.
I would hope so. Because
Yeah, no, I
God, that's
am.
a lot of
I
work.
mean, I will be totally honest though. Like, I had read a couple of your stories and I thought, okay. And then you sent me like new stories and they were even better
Yeah,
than what I had hoped for. So that was
that's
pretty great.
amazing. That's I'm glad to hear that. That's really that's
Well, because you never know, like, if you're not totally
sure.
familiar with someone's work, you might, like, read, like, one or two stories and be like, wow. And then you ask for, like, a whole,
Yeah,
and then you get some where you're like,
like that. So well, that the other ones were good. So yeah, no, that's really that's really validating and very good to hear. Because
well,
my
I also, being a writer, I know sometimes writers just need someone to go, you're worth it, and just kind of pet their
yes,
hair.
yeah,
And you're like,
like
okay,
yeah,
yes.
you just need to add a girl sometimes, and
Basically.
yeah, yeah, and that's helpful. And I know, like, given I know we'll talk about this, but given the amount of time that I've been writing, which hasn't been all that long, to be honest, I guess in some ways in terms of how long other people have been at it. But I haven't been in the game for all of that. I mean, I guess maybe about 10 years almost at this point. And, I feel, and I know you know this as well. Like you look back at some of your earlier work, and you're just kind of like, what, what was happening?
Yeah, I had a lot of stuff in yeah, I started about 10 years ago getting published, but they were all
Sure, yeah,
no
yeah,
payment
oh yeah.
contributor copy
Hmm.
things. And like a lot of them were in this magazine, online magazine called Surreal Grotesque. And
I love
yeah,
surreal
I'm.
grotesque. I didn't know that.
What's that?
Oh, I said
Were you in that too?
I don't think I ever sent anything to them, but that was one of the places that I wanted to submit to when I first started, because I started around that same time. And I don't know if we knew each other back then via social media, but I think we kind of, if we weren't in the same orbit, we were in nearby orbits at that time. So yeah.
Probably, yeah. When I started, I was much more like
Yeah.
splatterpunky,
Yeah. Yeah.
and all my stories were, I mean, they were just like what terrible thing can happen to someone's body.
Right. I know you and I have
Um,
had some discussions via messenger about some of that stuff, and I was kind of lumped in, not necessarily splatterpunk, but I was lumped into sort of like an extreme horror category,
well,
which
I say splatterpunk because a lot of people that they're more familiar with that term. I thought
yeah,
of it as extreme horror.
yeah, and I don't think that I'm necessarily no longer part of that. I don't know. That's a whole another can of worms, but yeah, I was kind of thrown in that too. And so surreal grotesque was one of the few places that accepted that kind of stuff, because and I don't know if this is the case across the board, but I know for me back in the day, I got a lot of rejections just because that's the game. But I also got a lot of rejections that
Yeah.
were explicitly like, if you could tone this story down, that would be great. We'd like to publish it, but you can't, you know, that level of violence
Well,
towards.
yeah, I mean, that's funny because, like, that's
Yes,
still
yeah,
sort of even though I am way more toned down, that still is the case sometimes.
that is still the case. Yeah, I mean, there's still places that are like, so you can't do that to an infant in a story. Could you not have that happen in there? And I'm like, well,
I
no.
suppose, yeah. I guess it
You
depends
know,
which venue it
so
is.
sure. But it is, I mean, it, like, it's really, it's hard to find places that accept.
Yeah, it's hard to find markets that are, I guess, for lack of a better term, extreme
Yeah,
horror, or not even extreme horror, just willing to put out something.
yes,
I will say, Vastarian seems to be pretty good about
yeah,
it, but it's like
yeah,
borderline, like it has to
yeah.
fit
It
with
has
them
definitely has to
beforehand.
fit their vision, which I love. I love Vastarian, but they definitely, yeah.
But they definitely put out like Max D. Stanton's patent for an artificial uterus, which was just
I haven't, you know what, I haven't read that one yet, but it's on my to read list. But I've heard that story sort of mentioned in some circles, and I'm like, oh.
yeah. I told him when I interviewed him, I was like, "Oh, you did that one," like, and I tried to not say that was fucked, but
I'm pretty sure. I mean, given the title alone and what I know about the story, I'm
he
certain that he
knows,
probably
yeah.
knows that was fucked, and that was probably the intent. But yeah.
So, so we covered that. You started more or less 10 years ago. Was that
Hmm.
seeking
Yeah,
publication?
that's when I got published. So I my first story sale, which was not for any money, it was for exposures, was around 2010, 2000, maybe 2009, even maybe 11 years, but 2009, 2010. And there was an anthology called Indiana Horror, and it was all fiction that was, horror fiction that was either written by people who lived in Indiana or were from Indiana, or the story was set in Indiana. It had to have some connection to this very strange state that I live in. And that was like that was my getting into print moment. And it was an anthology. And then I think the publisher had a series, like it was a yearly series for quite some time. But they also did some other collections, and one of them was, I don't even remember what the name of it was, but one of them, they had like a editor's choice award or something for the next collection. So I resubmitted and I ended up winning that award. It was for like $25.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's
but like,
exciting.
right, like it was like $25, and it's like totally not a big deal. But like, when you're first starting and it's your first time seeing anything you've written in print, like I was stoked. I was so excited. And so that's really how I got my start. So.
That's cool. I think mine was. I mean, I was in something from a woman named Ronnie Reaper, and she had two. She did. I don't remember how I got in touch with her about that. I
Mm-hmm.
think she just had like a horror blog, and I just happened to see that she was doing that. So I did those two. But like my
Yeah.
first big one
It
was
was so different.
it was called Soul Survivors Hometown Tales, because I used to be in this Facebook. I think I still am. This Facebook group for the work of David Moody, who's like a British author,
Mm-hmm.
and he does like a lot of zombie type stuff. And they had just mentioned like we're gonna do like an anthology, and I don't know, I didn't know if I was gonna get in, but I just was like, oh, I'll write this thing and send it. And I don't know, man,
There you go.
pretty nice looking book. I didn't get any money though, and
Right. Yeah.
that is something you learn eventually. The thrill of just seeing your name isn't
You
enough,
can't
and you're
use
like,
that thrill to buy food. So it's, which
yeah.
is
You
unfortunate.
can't go to the store and be like, check it out. And they're like, that's
Look at
great.
my
That's like
anthology.
$5.
Right. Like, here's the electric company. I wrote a thing. It's in an anthology, and they're like, "That's great. You still owe us $200 for your electric bill." And I'm like,
I know, and that is such a early writer thing too. It's like you never want to be a jerk to people, but I've noticed with some of the people that have just started, they'll be like, "I'm in this and that," and you want to be like, "Oh, no, it's good though. It's good."
right. It
But
is. I mean,
but in your
it's
head, you're like, you might
yeah.
want to go for something bigger though.
Right. I mean, I think if anything, it's good to tell these sorts of stories. And I hope that, people who are, and it feels weird for me to say that to tell someone who's starting off as this, I know I have accomplished things, but you always sort of feel like I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, like S.L. Edwards will constantly say how I'm
You're established,
established,
yeah, and
and
you're
I'm
like,
like, but I'm really
I'm
not
not.
though. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
like I'm not getting into year's best horror or anything.
Right. I got an honorable mention twice. Like I was
I have one so far from
that Yellow,
Datlo
yeah.
from I think
That's
last
rad.
year.
That's I can say that about somebody else. Like I can say you're established, but I would never say that about myself because I just wouldn't. But
Well, the bar is constantly like the goalpost constantly
true,
changes. Is the
true.
thing?
That's a
It's
good
like
point.
that's just how it goes.
Yeah, but I would hope that people, if anybody like listens to this and they're starting out, like it's okay. You start out where you start out, and that's awesome. But it's also okay to kind of want more. I think it took me a long time to really just feel like, okay, I would like to be paid in actual cash dollars for the work that I do, and I think that's okay. And I know that certain people have issues with that more so than others. But yeah, I think that's, yes, you have to start somewhere. And I know when I was, in college and my bachelor's degree is in English and creative writing. And, there's all this stuff about paying dues and, just trying to get into print and all that. And that's great. That's awesome. That's very true. But it is also, it's okay to want more than that, I think.
It is true. Sorry, I'm letting my cat in because she just won't stop yowling.
That's okay.
Okay, come on. All right. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Okay. She'll probably leave in a second anyway. I mean, I don't mind that much.
Right. I mean, it's a cat. Like, she's just gonna.
Yeah. So let me see. God damn it, Kitty. Could you at least not knock into stuff? All right. Let me think. Okay. So I'll obviously cut all this out.
Sure.
So you were talking. Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah. No, it's normal to have. It's normal for the aspirations you have to kind of move around. I remember.
Yeah.
What really did it for me was there was an extreme horror author who, I believe his name was Shane something, I forget now, but he had a post about how it's not about the amount of money, it's about the fact that people respect the time and effort you put into your art enough to pay you anything.
Yeah.
And that was like a big, like, because his whole article was like, it could be like $1. As long as you're making some form of money, like that shows that they're willing to, respect the amount of time and effort you put into something.
Sure. Yeah.
Because before that, I just thought, well, I mean, like, I don't need the money that much. And like,
right.
Oh, it's only, it would only be a small amount. But it's like, that small amount is like them basically being like, okay, I'm glad you did this work. Here is this.
Right. We appreciate the effort you put into it because we know it's not, it's not easy. Even if I find even if I have a story that sort of, and this is rare for me, but even if I have a story that just sort of writes itself, it's still difficult. Like it's still work. And so, yeah, I think that is really important that you get some kind of acknowledgement in the form of compensation that, that you did something and we appreciate it. And, we would like you to continue to do so. So that's always nice.
It is nice. So I guess let's take it to the present. So the most immediate thing we have coming out from, that's a weird thing, by the way, too. When you start a press, you start saying we.
Yeah.
Even though I know it's just me, I will say we because you get used to being like, this is NICTITATING Books and we.
Right.
Because they don't know it's just me.
Right.
So it's this weird form of psychosis. Suddenly you and the press have become two people.
You've become two. You're one, but you're also two people. It's
one and two.
Yeah, it's messed up.
But so we have, for some reason in my head, the first word always screws up.
Yes, we'll talk about this, and I'm glad you brought it up. So
telesignatures, yes, from a future corpse. Which I've read about 2,000 to 3,000 words of so far. Very engaging. I like it. It's very it's loaded to say it's a lot like True Detective, because like
Yes.
there's a lot of stuff people feel about that show nowadays. But
Yeah.
I do sort of see like an influence of that, or like a Barker influence almost.
Mm-hmm. That's fair and awesome. I think everybody who knows me knows how I feel about Clive Barker. So
But yes, so that's exciting.
I like it.
And
I'll take it.
if you could, without giving too much away, do you want to say what that's about?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, it's so telesignatures of a future from. I always confuse the conjunction. It's telesignatures from a future corpse.
I did of a before,
Yeah,
so
I
that's fair.
confuse, and I guess it kind of works either way. But it's sort of cosmic horror noir-ish police procedural suspense thriller detective story. I think that's right. There's a lot of descriptors there.
I would say that's fair.
But yeah, it's a story that's set in this small kind of vacationy town in upstate New York called Markham, and there's a series of very brutal murders of children, and they have sort of a cyclical nature to them. And our protagonist is a detective who has, of course, has her own sort of baggage, and is trying to figure out who is doing this. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much. I think that's a pretty good descriptor of it overall. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty good. And it's gonna be about like 10 to 15,000?
Yeah, I'm guessing about 10 to 15,000. I think we have close to 5,000 or maybe a little bit over of that completed, and I know pretty clearly where the story is headed.
And we found a terrifying real life beach
Yeah.
in Buffalo.
Mm-hmm. And the what was it called?
I think
Cargill,
it was Gallagher Beach is the name of
it. The Gallagher Beach, and then what was that structure? That grain silo?
I don't
or that
remember what the
grain
grain silo was called, but it looks like it was in some. It looks like it's from an Eastern Bloc country, like that has been irradiated.
Yes,
so.
it looks like something out of what's the not Chernobyl, but the little village where there are still people who just never left after Chernobyl. It looks like something from out of there. It's horrifying.
Yeah, I can't remember the name now, but yeah, no, so I'm very excited for that novelette. I don't remember if I've been calling it a novella or a novelette.
I think novelette is what we settled on.
It's so arbitrary.
It kind of is. I mean, it's longer than a short story. It's shorter than a novel. So that's.
I think the best thing I saw was Joe Hill had a collection of 4, and the press for it was 4 short novels, and I was like, why haven't I just called it a short novel?
That's
right, because it fixes everything.
Right.
You don't have to explain the difference between a novelette and a novella.
Right.
You can just go, it's like a novel, but short.
Right. Because a long short story doesn't, the long and the short sort of, cancel each other out. But if you call it a short novel, that's pretty genius. It's right there, genius, it's almost like it's too obvious. Like people, I would imagine that I wouldn't say that because I'd be like, that's too obvious. Like that sounds dumb. No, it doesn't. It sounds perfect. So yeah.
I know. I mean, as someone that's wrote a novel too, I can tell you.
Yeah.
You frantically Google when you're near.
Like, is this over?
I think it was at like 47,000. I was like, oh, is this a novel? And you go through like shortest novels, and then sometimes the novels are actually novellas.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but the word length is so arbitrary.
It's very arbitrary. Well, and then I remember when I have a formally published novella that I don't talk about a lot. We can talk about it, but whatever. But it's
Mother of Monsters.
Yes, Mother of Monsters. Yeah, the Modern Night Hill. Yeah, that one. And that one is, I think the word count is explicitly within the novella range. But then if you put it, so there's like. Is it a novella based on print copies or is it a novella based on Kindle? Because Kindle's a whole different formatting thing, and that's a whole, you know what I mean? And so like that also screws things up in terms of like
count because the
Yeah.
page count can
The page
fluctuate
count
so
is is
much.
is so, yeah, it's so arbitrary. So yeah, but I like short novel. I think I want to stick with that. That sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, I've been considering myself a novellaist for like the past 4 years because it's like I wrote one novel, but like, and I've only had two novellas standalone published, but I've probably written like four or five,
Yeah,
or maybe even
it's a
more.
good length.
Just becomes a thing.
It's a good length. Yeah, it's because a novel, like, and because a novel is daunting. Like, it's just, and it becomes a slog, and you just kind of have
I'm into
to
the
like.
the halfway point of my what will be the second published novel, at least ideally.
Mhm.
But I wrote a whole first novel that took me 2 years, and I got to about 60,000 words, and I just like went back and read it, and it's just like beginning was okay, end was okay, but in the middle just totally dragged, and
Mhm.
it would have been so much work to try to fix it
Yeah.
that I was just like, it's better just to like leave it unpublished and learn from that.
But you were able to incorporate parts of that into some of your other stuff, right? Is that what?
I mean, I'm going to,
Yeah.
and yeah, there were certain aspects I definitely like without having written. I called it Atrocities Across America because it stood for AAA
Oh, nice.
because it was a road trip book. So I'm a douche,
No, that's awesome.
and I used to abbreviate it as AAA. Um, but I learned, like I learned from it, like, okay, like, so I like this part of the book, but I don't really like this part of it. So I just sort of
Mhm.
incorporated a little of that into Demon.
Yeah.
But that's sort of how all writing goes. It's like you write a few short stories you're not entirely happy with, but those teach you stuff, and then you a few years later write new ones, and then you learn from those, and you keep going and expanding in that way.
Sure, sure. As long as you have something to build off of, I think that's the main thing, is just trying to continue that momentum when you can is really like the paramount sort of thing, I think. Because I have several novels in various stages of completion, and like it's one of those things, like, I don't want to give them up because it's so much work, but at the same time I'm like, are you really going to actually finish this? Because it's been 10 years, you know?
Oh, in terms of like false starts on novels, I've probably got
Yeah,
five like
yeah.
total because it is very easy for me to get to. Like I had a whole one that was supposed to be taking place in a basically in a warehouse, like a haunted warehouse type of thing.
Mhm.
And I got like 100 pages into it, and like it's still I'm gonna write it at some point, but just like I don't know. I sent it to someone who said, "Well, this part's good, but then I wasn't crazy about this turn over here." And like by the time I got to that, I'd already started working on other stuff, and I was like, "All right, just
Yeah,
not ready for it yet."
yeah, yeah, and that's fine. I think that's also, it's just a lot of, I mean, I'm really learning that a lot of being a writer is just really, besides, actually writing, is being really flexible and letting go of a lot of like preconceived notions about what the process should or should not be, and just kind of doing what works for you. Like like this, I don't know. I think you and I have talked about this a little bit. Like this, like the whole releasing of telesignatures in like sort of, not a, well, I guess kind of like a serial kind of story, without having the full thing actually completed is so scary to me. But at the same time, one, it makes sense. Two, I think it's a really,
Well, I guess my whole thing was we had initially talked about doing like 2020 for the release, maybe
yeah,
late
yeah,
2020 for your full collection.
yeah,
And then I think wisely, were like, let's say 2021, so that gives me
right.
time to
Let's,
actually, if I
because
want to make it longer, I can work on new stuff.
sure,
But I had talked to a couple people who had some success with just the ebook format, and like, for better or worse, I just never thought of that as a viable, because there's still a tiny bit of stigma with the ebook only people. It's like the
mm-hmm.
99-cent ebook people. You just picture them like
Yeah, yeah,
almost like a Chuck Tingle type, just like it's a ghost, and they just write it real quick just to get it out every month, and then. But the reality is like there is somewhere in the middle
right,
where you
right,
write something and release it ebook only, and
right,
go from there,
and it
because
is
people do print only
like,
all the time.
yeah, yeah, right. And there's no, obviously, like, there's no stigma attached to that, but but there's still that whole idea that the tangible thing is more valuable than the digital edition, which,
I think
hmm,
that's, I mean, I get it, but it's still,
I
you
do
gotta
too.
live
But
in
it's also
you gotta
like,
live in the present too. I mean, a lot of
right,
people myself included, sometimes, it's cheaper. Well, generally with small press, cheaper to do an ebook.
Mm-hmm.
You get it instantly.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about if you have
Yeah.
like food on your fingers.
Right.
You would think that's like a stupid, but like there have been times I've wanted to go to the beach and it's like, oh, I can't take this book because it's like
Right.
somewhat rare, and I have, I'm gonna have sand and
Right.
stuff on my
And
hands
I,
and
yeah.
sunblock.
And it's, I mean, it's certainly like just like for just travel, period. Like it's a lot easier to have a bunch of, Kindles or whatever on your phone or tablet than trying to carry, like 5 different novels around. Like that sucks. Like,
No, it's absolutely true, but I'm very excited to do telesignatures and just to see the reception,
yeah, that's a big part of it too, is like just the reception of it.
just to see
Yeah.
how it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, and so that process, which I really appreciate you opening that door and having that being, part of the,
Well, because I thought about it and it's like otherwise it could be a year or more.
right,
And I'm
right,
telling people,
before,
I'm doing crowdfunding like, oh, for this
for what?
thing, but
Right,
it's like a year out.
right. Like we'll get it to you. Seriously. We promise. You just got to wait a year, which, yeah. But I
Which is
really,
totally standard, by the way. I don't know why
right,
I have to be the
absolutely.
guy but it's wrong for me, even though like literally every other press does that.
I mean, I think that it's. I mean, again, like I'm coming at this from the perspective of a writer, and I don't own a press, and I'm not, and I haven't. I've done some editing, but I think it's again. I think it's nice to have something to point to. Like I think it's not like because I think we've reached the point, for people who are readers and people who are writers, and of course there's that enormous overlap between the two. Where we reach the point where we're all accustomed to Kickstarters and Indiegogo campaign, like the various crowdfunding, platforms, like you kind of know how that works and how sometimes it can go south and sometimes, and more often than not it goes well. um and I think that, I mean, at least for me personally, like being able to have access to something immediately is just pretty, I don't know, I just think that's pretty cool. I like it.
Yeah, no, I do like the quicker. I mean, even with the Indiegogo, I'm making sure that with every ebook tier, Screaming Creatures
Mm-hmm.
is like one of the
Yeah.
ebooks. So that way, like no matter how long the other two take, I
Here,
can
you
just be
got
like,
this.
here, you've
Right,
got
here's this
something at
thing
least.
that is cool.
And I think that's me coming at it from a reader's perspective, honestly, because
Sure.
I have contributed to Kickstarters before where I've never got a product.
Ooh.
And it wasn't much, it was like $5, but it was still enough where I was like, so nothing though? Just like not a
Sure, but
single
it's still
thing?
like you wanted. I don't get anything, right? Like I could at least get like a cup of coffee. I don't get nothing. Okay,
So
well,
I
dang.
definitely, I mean, my bullshit meter is like, it's constantly flickering. So I want to make sure, like, okay, guys, like here, like this
Like for
literally exists,
real,
and you can have
we
it
are
right
really
now.
you're gonna have this thing when you contribute, and it'll be rad, and it will be used for your contribution will be used for future things. We're good for it.
But yeah, that's also me coming at it from a writer's perspective because I've noticed if there's, if it's an invite only thing and like it's sort of assumed I'm going to get in, like I'll write that story so much quicker because I know, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, someone wants this. Whereas if it's writing it and then submitting it,
You can drag,
that
yeah.
takes me a lot longer because it's like this very
Like
nebulous, like
it
it might
might, it
go
might not.
somewhere.
We don't know. Probably, hopefully, we'll see. But yeah, that definitely makes it. And yeah, and for somebody like me who is a notoriously slow writer, largely because of like perfectionism and stuff. I find having that kind of, and I'm going to use the word pressure, but I don't mean pressure in a bad way. But that,
No, there's
maybe not even
pressure. I
pressure. Like,
mean, there's
I
people
mean,
paying you,
yeah, it's
so.
right, but it like if it's good, like it's a positive thing. Like it's like people really want
Oh,
to
well, it's
read
not that
this.
many
Like
people though, so.
I know it could be it could just be you. Like I don't even care. Like it could be you or like my mom. I don't care. But that in and of itself is enough to be like, okay, like I can do this. I can work on this. I don't have to, and it's not going to help anybody for me to, try to, draw blood from a stone trying to get the words on the page. Like just write the damn thing. Like that's always been my biggest block is just to get to the point of writing the damn thing. And I think that process, the process of having a crowdfunding that's a crowdfunding thing that's the campaign. Yeah, that's linked to it helps.
Well, just getting to do a shorter length thing, because I know
Right.
if you tell someone I need you to write a book as quickly as
Yeah.
possible, that's like the worst way to get someone to, or at least maybe they will, and then you just be like, well,
Right.
like I can
And
tell you to
yeah,
rush
and that's,
this.
you don't want to do that because then that puts them in a really awkward sort of position of like, I wanted you to write this quickly and you did, but now it's kind of bad. So,
But not like this, yeah.
right. Quickly, but not the way you did it.
Right, but it is interesting, the new landscape, because I hadn't even thought about it like this, but with so many things being crowdfunded, the model's totally different, because the old model is you know, pay for everything, do it yourself, you sort of promote it a couple months in advance, maybe 6 months, and you compile, and then when it's ready, you put it out, and then people pay for it. The new model is you give them,
Right.
this is what it's going to be, they pay for it, and then they get it. So it's a very different dynamic.
It is. It is. And it seems, I don't know, like it seems like in some ways
I think it has benefits and
it has
negatives.
it has some benefits, but it also has some risks associated with it. But I think ultimately
and I think the
is
major
much more...
risk is just like depending on who you're working with, or like, you know, like you can't always plan stuff.
Right.
Like, you might be putting someone on like someone's book out and then suddenly they get hit by a car or something.
You have no
and you're
idea.
like, what do you do then?
What are you doing?
That's when you get the ghostwriters. No.
That was awful. You should be ashamed of yourself.
I am ashamed. This is the second ghostwriting joke I've made in the last month, too. In the Ginger Nuts of Horror one, William T. asked me, your style switches up so much. And I wrote, it's the ghostwriters. And because I don't know. I'm a sick person. And I know plagiarism and ghostwriting is like one of the most taboo things to talk about as a writer.
Sure.
So I obviously talk about it all the time.
But the thing is, that cracks me up. Like I understand why plagiarism is so taboo, but ghostwriting is how so many people pay their bills. Like I don't even see why that's...
I heard a rumor that Stephen King is getting ghostwritten nowadays.
Really?
And I can't substantiate it, but oh man, I don't know.
I've heard that he, like, so are you saying that the rumor is that he, like, somebody is ghostwriting with
that someone is ghostwriting for him, or like that he's become sort of like a James Patterson, where it's more of like a committee.
It's like a warehouse.
And he'll sort of give them the rough idea and then maybe do some edits.
Huh. Interesting. I wonder if I could just do that now. Like, do I have to get James Patterson, Stephen King level famous? Like, could I just...
Right. Do you have to
I just want to do that right now. That seems... I'm going to try that. Not right now, but for later.
Well, I'll just get Eminem, because apparently he does that all the time. Or for other people, he used to. I heard he used to do that for Dr. Dre, but I don't know. Now it's totally off topic.
That is wild. That's yeah. I'm completely flabbergasted by that.
I mean, like, that's the funny thing too, though. I was thinking about this the other day, and this has nothing to do with anything, but we both have ADD, so we'll like it. Like, you know, like in terms of prose writing, there's so much stigma about ghostwriting. But if you go to you know, like film and television, like the norm is that
that's all they do.
Or there might be someone they hire that they never talk about who does like script doctoring.
Yeah.
And then it's like with music, it's like it is surprising when someone only writes their stuff, because usually if you look at the credits, it's like 5 different people.
The expectation is that there'll be 5 different producers and other people who are involved.
I don't even mean just produce. I mean like written words.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like lyrics written by like 17 different people.
Like the
and
lyrics,
you're like, wait.
Yeah, like, and like most of the huge artists, like your favorite people, like they aren't writing their own stuff.
No.
They might write a line or two.
Right. But it's very rare. I mean, like, and a lot of, like some of the biggest names in pop, like they don't write their own lyrics or songs at all. And it's
I remember the weirdest, most interesting thing, and I will incorporate it into a story sometime, but there is this one Scandinavian man that has written, if you look at his credits, it's like every major pop song from like 2000 to like 2000, or maybe 1998 to like 2006.
Really?
And it was like every huge, like Britney Spears or Backstreet or whatever, like he had just written it.
Oh, shoot. I vaguely recall hearing something about this person and just being like, what?
And that's just, I don't know, just the idea of that, just that concept of some random guy in, say, Sweden, he just like wakes up like near the fjords. I don't know anything about Sweden, but you know, he just like goes out and feeds the fairies, and then he's like, I'm going to write a new Britney Spears song. But it is just so much of that is like, if you crack the formula.
Yeah.
You got
you
it.
got it. You got it.
But so there is something unique, I think, about fiction writing, about prose writing, especially in the small press where probably no one's bothering getting a ghostwriter.
Sure.
It's like one of the last art forms where there is like a realness to it, where it's like, these are my words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even with heavy editorial, like, still my words.
So much. Yeah. Yeah. Like that's still, and if, the idea that, I mean, it's one of those things too, where it's like, it seems like ghostwriting is more about, even in the, and I don't think it's called ghostwriting in that format when we're talking about music and the people who are ghostwriting songs, just, yeah, like the songwriters or, yeah, are,
I think it's just called writing, yeah, like songwriting.
the idea is like, it's meant to appeal to as many people as possible. And with a lot of the smaller press stuff, that's not,
Right.
I don't know, not to say that it's not meant to do that, but that's generally, I don't know, like that's not the expectation, I guess.
Yeah, I think people are fine if it does
Yeah.
appeal to a large group of people, but generally it's designed for a limited audience. It's less that it's designed for a limited audience. More people aren't intentionally going out of their way to try to hit like a huge audience.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's pretty standard for NICTITATIng presents 10-minute long diatribe about pop songs, which has nothing to do with anything. It's tangentially related.
It is. It's a parallel.
But that's probably a good segue to go into the ending part of the interview, where I do my random ass interview part, which is always the most daunting because just coming up with random questions is so hard because they're never really random to me either. I have like a set pattern where it's like a question about food or swears or but okay, all right, let me think here. If you could go to dinner with any type of monster, what kind of monster would you go to dinner with?
A Cenobite. Does that count as a monster?
I mean, I count a demon as a monster, yeah.
If you want like a more monstery monster, I guess like, God, I don't know. I mean, I think I answered too quickly because
No, I think Cenobite's a good answer, man. I don't know if I'd want Pinhead specifically, but
I don't think he
seems like kind of dour.
I imagine if you catch him in the right mood, he's an amazing conversationalist, but he seems like a pretty taciturn dude. Or it's like he's gonna go off, he's gonna launch into a speech, and then you're gonna get cut into pieces. So, like I just want to eat this tiramisu, but yeah. So
let me finish dessert.
I go to dinner with. It's a weird question.
I know, that's the point. Let me think. This isn't so random, but could you ever see yourself writing anything that didn't have horror elements in it?
Oh, I have started some things that don't have horror elements in them, and I've tried, and this has been the case since I was very young, and inevitably and invariably somebody gets killed, and it's gruesome and it's graphic, and I just don't I don't know how to not do that. So to answer the question, yes, I would try, but I don't trust my ability for my brain.
I've tried a couple
to not
times.
Go that direction.
I remember at some point my sister and my mom and I sat down and they were like, "This is what she would write if it was going to take off." And I tried writing this like young adult, like vaguely horror story, like a young adult paranormal romance, basically.
Yeah.
I got 4 chapters in before I was like, I can't do this. I think the working title was "Loving a Ghost Sucks."
That's kind of cute.
And like then it became super meta where I was like, I'm gonna write it under a pseudonym. But it's like the pseudonym, and then I had an idea like, okay, so it's gonna be a book about the pseudonym, she's writing the book, and she's in the book, and then I'm writing.
Whoa.
And it just became too much. It was like, what am I doing?
What's happening right now?
Just write about demons again.
Just go back to that. Yeah, and it's funny because I know that this I like that that's the genre that you thought that you're that was presented to you as what would work, because I know, and this we talk about this a lot during like Women in Horror Month, how women in particular, it's always the expectation like do you want to write like love stories or romance or something? And I'm not against those things. And some of the stories I've written do have those elements, but it's always like, it always takes a dark turn. Like if I could keep things, light and fluffy and, marketable in that way, I totally would. But that's just not, like, my brain just does not work in that way. Like, I don't know. So I could try it, but it's gonna end poorly. I'm just telling you right now.
That's fair.
So.
I probably won't even cut this part out, but my cat has been such a butt this whole interview. She's just staring at me very aggressively right now because I think I fed her too early this morning. And now she's like the exact amount of... Yeah, speaking of Pinhead.
And now she's hungry.
8 hours
again,
exactly have gone by.
Debating
now
on...
it is time for you to feed me.
That's your cat. That's your cat.
She's a sweetie, but she is just a brat.
Yeah. You should feed that cat before she eats.
Let me think of one more random one, and then we can probably start closing this puppy down. Sorry, kitty, I didn't mean to talk about dogs in front of you.
How could you monster?
We have this orange cat show up in the yard, and she gets so mad.
This is not the orange cat? Oh, because the orange cat's not your cat, is that right?
It's not my cat. No, it's the weirdest thing. Like a year ago, he just started showing up. And I'm a cat nerd, so I'd be like, here, want a treat? And now he just shows up almost every day.
That's hilarious.
Or like sometimes I'll just look in my yard, and he's just like hanging out in one of our apple trees, and I'm like, wait, what? And he'll be there for hours, too. It's just like, okay.
Just hanging out.
You do you, I guess.
I'm just vibing right now, man.
So let me think. God, these random ones are hard, man. Like,
I'm really surprised you just come up with spontaneous questions. Like, I would have a long list of random questions and then just pretend.
Oh, I mean, like, the realness is I freestyle every interview, and I know saying I freestyle them sounds really weird, but I don't have anything written down ahead of time.
That's kind of amazing. I would be nervous to do that.
I mean, in some ways it's because I respect people too much.
Sure.
In other ways it's because I have no respect for anyone. But I don't know. My style of interview I've learned because I've tried. It's not like I haven't tried to write them down before, and it's so robotic because it's just like, and if you could,
right. And if you're doing like multiple. Like, if you're interviewing multiple people over a period of time, like, and every question is the same, like, I get how consistency can be helpful, but it also makes it kind of kind of boring because you know what to expect. So I can appreciate the spontaneity. And also,
yeah, that's most of what I come at is like, I come at it from like the two angles. So it's like, as a reader, what would I want? Or as a listener, what would I want?
Yeah.
And then, okay, what do I want to do?
Right. As the interviewer.
And
as somebody with ADHD, this is comfortable to me.
Well, also it's the ADHD. I get super bored so quickly. But yeah, no, I guess I have, and I've had a lot of experience doing this style of interview too. I've been podcasting for at least 5 years. And you get used to, although there have been definitely some times where I've just sort of foot and mouth disease, just said something as a question, and then they're like, oh, yeah, it's because my cat died. And you're like, oh.
Like, oh, sorry.
You're like, my bad. I'm just kidding.
So what exactly inspired? I'm so sad because my cat died. Like, well, my cat died. Oh, well, sorry.
I know, it's a bummer. Okay, here's one. It's sort of not so random, but what is the most Indiana food?
Oh boy. Depending on who you talk to, that's probably a toss up between, so I live in Northeast Indiana, and I don't know why the people of Northeast Indiana are super into grilled cheese, but they don't call it grilled cheese. They call it a cheese toasty, and there are some places where if you call it the wrong thing, you could get in a fist fight with somebody. Again, I don't know why people are this wrapped up about it or worked up about it. But probably the most Indiana food, honestly, is corn, which is not an exciting answer because it's Indiana. And, that's all we really have is corn and meth. That's like all that's out here. But yeah, I mean, corn. There are cornfields everywhere. It's, like people watch like Children of the Corn, the movie, and it looks like that. Like, it's not like, that's not a fabrication. If you've never been through Indiana, the cornfields of Indiana look exactly like
I drove through Indiana a little bit. I I mean, I stayed in Indianapolis.
Yeah. I mean,
So it
yeah,
was like a motel by the airport, and
sure.
honestly, it was a little scary at times.
I mean, Indiana has a really, I guess we're kind of coming full circle, because the Indiana horror anthology, a lot of it is about, or the reasoning behind it was that, there are a lot of serial killers who live in Indiana.
Oh,
There are a lot
goody.
of serial killers who, yeah, there are a lot of, like haunted or supposedly haunted, like asylums and
It's
funny
funny that there's like
and
birds tweeting like merrily behind you
yeah, it
right when you
sounds
chose
yeah,
to talk about this.
it's good because I'm not supposed to talk about it. Yeah, I decided I came to a park instead of like having this discussion at my house, and it's like the most bucolic and beautiful day ever. But yeah, it's a really weird state that has just a lot of creepy, like it's very folksy but also super creepy at the same time. So,
Okay, I
which,
mean, yeah, that
you
scans.
know, that's an aesthetic. Yeah, that's that checks out. So yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
so
That's Indiana in a nutshell.
cat is so angry right now, so
Please go feed that
we should
cat before
probably
she
finish
eats
this
off
up.
your
Yes.
eyelids
But
or
okay,
something.
so in an interesting turn of events, the plugs will be the same for a change. So yes, but why don't we pretend like your plug is somehow different? Do your plugs.
Oh, sure. Oh, am I plugging something? Is that what I'm supposed to be doing? I'm sorry.
I mean, just like just do a real quick, like, I don't know, telesignatures.
Oh yeah. So Telesignatures of a Future Corpse, or from a Future Corpse, will is being released through the Nictitating Press crowdfunding campaign, which is through Indiegogo. And the first chapter is up. It's a pretty wild and horrific horror story, I think. And yeah, you should definitely check it out. Is that what I'm supposed to do?
Cool. And yeah, we're gonna have we've settled on "We Are Here to Hurt You," at least in
Yes,
terms of
we're
the
here to hurt
collection
each
title.
other.
The
Yeah,
the
yeah, we're here
subtitle
to hurt
might
each
take a
other.
full year to actually get
Because we
down,
were settled
considering
on
we'll
it and then
come
it
up with
got
something and then someone
stolen.
will release another book with the subtitle. And
Oh, it was so good. But yeah, we are here to hurt each other is the uh upcoming, my first collection of short fiction. There's some stuff that's won some awards. Stuff that's been published in various places. And yeah, I don't know if you're I'm so bad at blurbing myself, but
it's fine.
yeah, do that stuff. You do that.
Christopher Rope says that you write this really horrific stuff very beautifully, and I think that's a fair assessment.
That
I
is
think
fair.
that is
Yeah.
again, not to keep going back to Barker, but that is a very Barker quality you have, is you'll write
Yeah.
the most horrific stuff, but it's so beautifully written that you're like, wow. And then you think about it though, and you're like, oh God, yeah.
That's horrifying. That's horrifying. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I go for. So I'm glad that is
I mean, it definitely comes
that is an
across.
easily discernible. Yeah.
Okay, so
An
now
easily
my
discernible
end,
trait.
I have Screaming Creatures, my first full-length collection. I say that because I had Too Late, which was 5 stories. But anyway, Screaming Creatures, first full-length collection, out now. I'm very pleased with how it's doing. It's already up to 4 Amazon reviews, and that's, I think, faster than any of my other books have had
Yeah.
in terms of like traction. So that's heartening.
Yeah.
It's nice to see, and I'm trying to keep it going. So yeah, Screaming Creatures, it's available on Amazon. And if you donate to the Indiegogo, there's my cat is being so terrible. Hold on just 1 second. She keeps jumping. She knows it's going to bother me, so she's jumping on the computer.
Oh, she's like, feed me right now.
All right. I'll edit that
Maybe.
part out. But anyway, yes.
Yeah.
Screaming Creatures, available now on Amazon. If you donate to the Indiegogo, you can get the Screaming Creatures ebook. The $15 tier is you'll get the Telesignatures ebook once it's done, as well as the Screaming Creatures ebook. And for $20, it's the Screaming Creatures ebook, Telesignatures, and an alien novella with a working title of Acclivity, which is, the title will change because that was a working title, and I didn't realize when you post stuff on Indiegogo, once the perk is up, you can't change the name.
Oh.
Yep,
Well,
these are things you find out.
These are things. That's we're learning as we go.
Yeah, because I figured, you can just edit. No, you can't edit once it's Once people
That's
are like claiming it, it's just going to be called Acclivity. So
kind of bizarre.
probably the
I mean, I guess that
first
makes sense, but yeah.
new newsletter I do will say, "Hey everyone, so don't freak out, but it's not going to be called Acclivity. So you're still getting the thing. It's just not going to be called that."
It just has a different name.
Yeah, I'm not ashamed to admit I thought it meant like rising, just in terms of like, but it actually is more in reference to like a slope, like a hill, as in
Ah,
like the acclivity of a mountain, or it
interesting.
was on an
Yeah,
acclivity.
it's
And then a declivity is when it goes down. And I was
like
like, well,
that's not
that's
what I
not what I
meant. That's
meant.
really
So,
funny because I noticed in the interview you did with on Ginger Nuts of Horror, and they asked what nictitating press was. Like that was one of the first questions I had. I was like, what does that even mean? And so I was so grateful that somebody else asked that question, and I could have like I looked it up, and I was still like, I don't fully understand. What is it? Blinking?
well,
What?
the thing, I mean, this will be a real quick thing too, but I just would love to talk about this. So with the internet, so much stuff gets taken. If you have a normal title, it
Yes,
gets scooped up so
yes,
quickly. And I think I had a eureka moment within the last couple of months, like, oh, the reason people do all these weird titles now must partly be because no one else will take those.
yeah, yeah.
And then it was like, oh, so now I've sort of turned over a new leaf. Because I used to be like, why would you? I'll just call it too late or
Right.
haha or like something very. But then I did Too Late, and as soon as I released it, there was another book
Too
called Too
late.
Late that came out at the same time by someone who was more established.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it got a movie. So to this day, if you search on Amazon for like Too Late, the first thing that pops up is this movie and then this other huge book. And then like somewhere on the second page is me. So I've learned,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's like so but sometimes when you're looking for obscure words, you don't know what those words mean.
Right.
Because
Well,
I did it real quick and it was like, that's another thing with crowdfunding and, all that stuff is like,
sure.
if you're doing it the traditional way, you do the working title, you realize, oh, I want another one, and then no one really knows.
Right.
Whereas with this, you have to have a title for it, basically.
Right. Before you can even put it up.
And then
So.
you do, and then you realize, like, oh, so it's going to be a weird thing when I tell everyone, like, not that weird, but, it's like, hey, you paid for this thing that's called this, but it's going to be called this.
But it's actually called that. Yeah. I think one thing I think I hope people appreciate is that it's a very transparent process.
Oh, it's
Like,
so transparent. It's like
you know,
see-through. Like I'm
like
super, I don't,
you're that yeah, you're like that anyway. So it's
I've
even
told you like
more
from the start, like I will take
yeah.
screenshots of like royalty statements to show
Yeah.
you,
Like this is what
because I know
we
in the
did and
past I've
yeah.
been a jerk to people, like, and it could very well have been they paid me everything that they owed me, but it's like without seeing a statement,
You don't know.
I
You
don't
don't know.
know.
Yeah. So it's I think for a number of reasons that level of
So
transparency
anyway,
is
yes,
good.
I'll be doctoring these royalty statements and sending them to you, and then pocket. No,
And pocketing all of
I'm sorry.
the cash.
And then I'm gonna move to Miami.
Oh,
That's a funny concept anyway. Just like, wow, this extra $300 is gonna.
that's gonna float you far, man. You're gonna go places with.
I know. But anyway, on that note, this has been NICTITATING Presents. Thank you very much for coming on, Paula. I know you're a very busy woman.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yes, I am.
So it was nice to finally get down and sit down and talk with you.
Yeah, you as well. You as well. This has been
I mean,
fun.
we've been talking a lot on the messenger, but
We have, but it's our first time
doing
actually
this
having
more
a
formal style.
an actual spoken conversation is pretty nice. So
Yeah, so this has been fun. Thanks everyone for listening to NICTITATING Presents. And we've got a lot more interviews lined up. We're going to have Daniel Brahm on, Emma Jane Gibbon, Kurt Favre,
yeah.
eventually Maxwell Bauman, Jonathan Rabb probably in September. So I've got a whole bunch of people lined up. One might question, why are you doing so many interviews when you have so much writing to do? But there it is. So anyway, yes, thanks for listening to NICTITATING Presents, and have a pleasant day or evening. Okay, good, that works.